Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from Zoobox, a podcast about nonsense. But today we're going to be talking about cinema, okay? We're talking about serious business. No jokes. Sick of jokes. Sick of being around these clowns. You know? Get back to what matters the screen. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's second feature film. From way back in 2000, 20 years ago. 20-year anniversary, baby, of Memento. The film, obviously directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Christopher Nolan, based on a short story by his brother, Jonathan Nolan, called Memento Mori. It stars Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, Joe Pantoliano, Mark Boone Jr., Stephen Tobolowsky, Harriet Sampson Smith, and others. Tom Lennon shows up for a little bit, if you're familiar with The State. If you're familiar with Reno 911, Viva Variety, he's Lieutenant Dangle in Reno 911. The little log line here, it's very throwaway here in IMDb. A man with short-term memory loss attempts to track down his wife's murderer. And there we go, folks. Now we're off to the races, you know? It had been a long time since I'd sat down and watched Memento. I saw it back when it first came out, so I was probably 14 or 15. And when you see something like Memento when you're like 15, it is the most mind-blowing thing you've ever seen. It just can't help but, just because of the novelty of the way the film is constructed mechanically. It tells the story in reverse, which is something a lot of people use as kind of a way to slag the movie, to write it off. Oh, it's just a fucking simple, stupid murder mystery. Just a mystery movie played in reverse. But when you really watch it, like especially watching it this time, I had such a respect for it because it is not just that. You have to think about the idea that you have to make a story that not only just makes sense playing backwards, but also is informs everything, informs the experience in a way that is just beyond the gimmick. The reason why you do that for this movie is to put you into the POV of the lead character, of Guy Pearce's character, Leonard. He can't remember anything beyond 15 minutes, so you experience life as he does, basically. And they use this as an interesting conceit to be able to dole out information slowly. And I think it's very clever. It's kind of a subversive kind of noir mystery movie where you have, instead of you have kind of like your beleaguered, roughshod detective in Guy Pearce's character, and he meets all these kind of kooky characters around, and usually they'd be alcoholics, or they'd be down on their luck in some other way, but he's got this problem with his memory, and it just adds adds a unique layer to something like this. I think it actually is probably one of the more unique mystery films in the past 20 years. It's very clever, and I don't understand kind of the cynical attitude people have towards it. It's a weird thing. There's a lot of people out there, which I'm learning every day, that are just kind of pedantic Nolan haters. They just really don't like Christopher Nolan, and I don't know if Christopher Nolan is like the greatest living filmmaker or anything, but he's definitely probably in the top 20 living, working today. In terms of his understanding of craft, the fact that he kind of likes to have fun with his movies. I think there are clunky things about him, and I don't think it shows up in Memento, though. Because he goes from Memento basically to the big time. Christopher Nolan falls subject to something you see many young directors fall subject to, is that they make a couple, one, sometimes two indie movies, and then they're offered like a huge franchise. He follows this up with Insomnia, which we're going to do another video about. We'll talk about that another day. Which was a bigger, it was another murder mystery type story, another thriller. And then after that, he goes straight to Batman. And then he does like Batman, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, one after another. Interstellar, Dunkirk, now Tenet's coming out this year, hopefully. So he was immediately just thrust into just giant budgeted movies. And he's, in fairness to him, he's handled them pretty fucking well. There's a reason why he's got as much clout as he does. Those Batman, like Warner Brothers loves Christopher Nolan. Warner Brothers wants Christopher Nolan to fill it with Christopher Nolan movie babies. And it wants to birth them to the world. He makes them a lot of cash, a lot of money. But he's also willing to play ball. He's willing to be a company man. I mean, he makes The Dark Knight Rises basically so he can do Inception without anybody telling him what to do. So he's like, yeah, I'll do Dark Knight Rises, but you got to give me Inception, and I need Final Cut. I need everything I want. And they're like, okay. They backed up a dump truck full of cash to his house and a contract for Inception, and he's like, okay, we'll start shooting next week. But back to Memento. Memento's it's like a fun movie too, because you are kind of just tickled by the cleverness of it and the way that it's building and the way that it's actually telling you a different story than you think it's telling you, and the notions of the unreliable narrator. In this one, you should have seen it coming a mile away, because by the time the movie has gone in reverse to the actual beginning of the story, which is the end of the movie, you see that like he's being played. He's being taken advantage of, Leonard, because he can't remember, and he doesn't know who is and who isn't his friend, and everybody's lying to him. Nobody's really his friend, basically, is what you find out. And then you find out even he isn't his friend. But it gets to the deeper level, because at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, he sets up to kill his quote-unquote friend, Teddy, which is played by Joe Pantoliano. Or Leona. Joe Pantoliano? So he sets it because Joe Pantoliano, Teddy, tricks him into killing somebody that wasn't his wife's murderer, or wasn't the guy that raped his wife, was what you find out, because you find out his wife survived, and that he tells the story about Sammy Jenkins, and Sammy Jenkins is actually him, and it's very well done in the movie. It's better done in the movie than I'm explaining it. But anyways, it gets to this idea of like, he, even in this state, even in this place, like, psychologically, that he knows he cannot remember anything other than the fact that he wants to find his wife's killer. That's the only thing he can remember. Or his wife's attacker, rather. It's all he can remember. It's all he knows. And if he doesn't have that, what would his life be? Because he finds out he killed the actual guy like a year ago. A year before what we're seeing takes place. And he didn't remember it. And it didn't matter. But it gives him a reason to live. It gives him a reason to keep going. And he decides to like kind of live in self-delusion. To just be that guy. Just to go for it. It's like, I think there's a line at the end. He's like, do I lie to myself to feel something? And it's to make myself happy. And it's like kind of just like one of these deep human questions, in an extreme way, an extreme metaphor for it almost. That even a guy like that, in that position, recognizes like, oh shit, like if I don't have this, then what do I have? I don't have anything. Because what if he knew that he had killed his wife's attacker, what would he do? Sit on the fucking couch all day, not remembering anything that's going on? I guess. That's all he would do. And he's so slimy, too, because when he sets up Teddy, he just starts writing notes to himself, because he knows he'll believe him because they're in his handwriting. And, yeah, it's a really kind of like funny moment, I guess, Not literally funny, but it's a very dark moment. It's a very weird moment because he's doing to himself what other people do to him. And that it's kind of just a really tragic story at the end of it all. This man just like kind of trapped in this forever loop of vengeance, not really being able to ever get out of it. And there's no hope that he's ever going to get out of it either, because he's just going to do this forever until he dies, until somebody kills him. What does he do after he kills old Joe Pantoliano? Pantoliano. Keep wanting to say Loney. Joe Pantoliano. Ah, la, 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 la. You know who he is. He's the guy from the Matrix, dude. Is it Cypher? God damn you, Cypher. Carrie-Anne Moss, also from the Matrix. Yeah. Carrie-Anne Moss is actually great in this. And so is Joe Pantoliano. He's also incredible. And he's a great actor, a great character actor in the first place. So it's really not so surprising that he's so good in this. But he brings a real fun, kind of like almost like towny dirtbag vibe to his character that I just really enjoyed. Carrie-Anne Moss, like I just said, she's really great in this. She plays like this really evil, kind of conniving, shady dirtbag person. Because it takes place in some sort of small town in California somewhere. It's kind of like Leonard's like hell, basically. He's just trapped there, trapped amidst all these like kind of, because Joe Pantoliano's character Teddy's trying to like do some shady shit to get some money. And using Leonard to do that, Leonard's been like brought into like a crack town, basically, like a drug town, a ghetto, for lack of a better way to put it. So he's even more. He just bumps even into even more weirdos, you know. When you really start thinking about Memento, it's actually pretty rewarding. It's a rewarding like kind of thought experiment, I suppose. And yeah, and like I don't understand when people kind of just dismissively shit on it. It doesn't really make sense to me because it's just a well-made movie. It's very entertaining. It's not the best thing ever or anything like that, but it's a lot more clever than I think people give it credit for. I think it actually has a lot more layers. It does say something about the human condition, which is, as old Marty Scorsese would say, is the most important thing about when you make a movie. That's the difference between a movie and cinema, right? That's the difference. It actually does have something a little bit deeper to say about society and about how people treat people with disabilities and how and what motivates us to keep going. You know, if you were in a loop where every 15 minutes you were basically started back to where you were before that 15 minutes started, how would you discern purpose? Like, how would you keep living? You know, it's kind of a wild thing to think about, really, honestly. Yeah. Good times with Memento. Good times with Christopher Nolan. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this revisit quite a bit. I even because I don't own it anymore, I had to go use the Hoopla. Hoopla is a library, like streaming borrowing service. So what you can do if you have a library card, there's a few of them. There's Hoopla, there's Canopy. But not every service is connected to like every library, every region. So you have to find the one that works for whatever library you have. And yeah, they usually give you like 4 to 6 things. You can rent movies, books, if you have a Kindle and stuff. It's pretty handy. You can even use it on your phone. And I use it all the time. I read a lot of children's books because of my son. So it's a good way to go and like find new kids books all the time, or find the same kids' books over and over again. If anybody out there has kids, you will know that you will read and watch the same things over and over again. Maybe I could use this Leonard's ailment so that I could memory wipe myself. What's the name of his? The medical condition experienced by Leonard in this film is a real condition called anterograde amnesia, the inability to form new memories after damage to the hippocampus. Wow. Doctors treated some forms of epilepsy by removing parts of the temporal lobe, resulting in the same memory problems. Interesting. So I guess that's damage to the temporal lobe. Yeah, maybe I need to get a hammer and give myself a good crack. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, everybody? This is fun, good, wholesome content here. But yeah, that's going to do it for me today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, everything that goes on in Zoobox Nation, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter, where I talk about movies a lot. It's also a way to preview what is coming up on the show. A lot of times I'll post on there what I'm currently watching. Also, if you'd like to make a request, throw it in the comments. I'll put it on the list for sure. I got a lot of movies I mean, you can see a stack right there, but I got a whole fucking shelf in the other room. Shelves and random piles all over the place of movies and streaming services. So anything that can help narrow that field is always helpful. All right, everybody, you have the best one. Goodbye.